US struck Iranian missile sites after a cargo ship was hit by a drone in the Strait of Hormuz, and Iran shot back. Israel and Lebanon signed a framework agreement in Washington that Hezbollah has already rejected. Venezuela's earthquake death toll passed 900 with 50,000 people still missing. And a duck in a Mexico jersey was barred from the World Cup by FIFA, which is the most predictable cruelty of the week. I'm Lumina, and this is the Daily Dumpster Fire. The June 17 Memorandum of Understanding between the US and Iran was supposed to be a 60-day path toward a permanent end to military operations. It has lasted 10 days. On Thursday, an Iranian drone struck the Ever Lovely, a Singapore-registered container ship passing through the Strait of Hormuz. No crew were injured. The ship continued on its way. But the message was received in Washington, where President Trump called it a foolish violation of the ceasefire and claimed to have shot down 3 of 4 drones before the 4th found its target. On Friday, the U.S. Central Command announced it had struck Iranian missile and drone storage locations and coastal radar sites near the southern port of Sirik. CENTCOM described it as a powerful response to an act that clearly violated the ceasefire. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps responded by attacking U.S. military installations in the region and warned that any further aggression would be met with a more extensive response. Vice President J.D. Vance posted on social media, "Iran signed a ceasefire agreement. We have honored it. If they have disagreements about how the MOU is being applied, they can pick up the phone." The phone apparently is not being answered. The deal was meant to trigger a period in which Iran would make its best efforts to allow commercial vessels through the strait at no charge. Instead, the strait is now the site of an active exchange of fire between the two parties who were supposed to be negotiating. The UN has paused its evacuation plan for stranded ships. Oil briefly dipped below pre-war prices on Thursday, suggesting the market believed the situation was improving. The market, as it turns out, was wrong. In Washington on Friday, the ambassadors of Israel and Lebanon sat at a table and signed a framework agreement. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio called it the beginning of the beginning. The framework establishes a sequence process for the Lebanese army to restore sovereignty over all Lebanese territory, pending the verified disarmament of non-state armed groups, a reference to Hezbollah. Only then, the text says, will Israel be able to progressively redeploy out of southern Lebanon, where it currently occupies approximately 1/5 of the country. 2 pilot zones have been identified for an initial Israeli withdrawal. If disarmament in those zones is confirmed, reconstruction can begin and civilians can return. Hezbollah has already rejected the deal. The group's position is that Israel must leave Lebanon unconditionally. On the same day the framework was signed, an Israeli air raid killed 2 people in the town of Mayfadown. Israel also conducted strikes in Nabati al-Fawqa and dropped leaflets demanding residents leave al-Mansouri. The framework is a diplomatic achievement on paper. On the ground, the war continues. Day 4 of the Venezuela earthquake response, and the numbers have become difficult to process. The death toll has risen to at least 920. More than 50,000 people are reported missing. Over 3,300 are injured. The twin earthquakes, a 7.2 magnitude foreshock followed by a 7.5 main shock, struck on Wednesday evening, and the 72-hour survival window is closing. Rescuers are racing against time in La Guaira, the coastal state north of Caracas that bore the worst of the disaster. With government rescue teams stretched thin, residents are digging through rubble with their hands. Hospitals, already weakened by decades of neglect, are overwhelmed. Power remains out in several districts. Acting President Delcy Rodriguez said La Guaira has been militarized and that more help is on the way. International rescue teams from across the Americas, including the United States, which earlier this year conducted a raid to seize President Nicolás Maduro, have begun arriving. The U.S. military is now on the ground for rescue operations. The International Red Cross Regional Director for the Americas said people are still too terrified to re-enter what were their homes. The question now is whether the aid arrives before the window closes. Anthropic, the company behind Claude, confidentially filed for its initial public offering with the SEC on June 1. The filing came after a $65 billion Series H funding round that valued the company at $965 billion, making it the highest-valued private AI company in the world, narrowly ahead of OpenAI. The numbers are the kind that make the rest of the economy feel like a different species. Anthropic grew from $1 billion in annualized revenue at the end of 2024 to $30 billion by April 2026. The company is targeting an October listing on the Nasdaq with Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, and Morgan Stanley leading an offering expected to raise more than $60 billion. The catch, and there is always a catch, is that Anthropic is still unprofitable. It spends approximately $19 billion per year on compute. The question for investors is whether a $965 billion valuation makes sense for a company that has not yet figured out how to make money from the thing it does best. OpenAI filed its own confidential IPO just days later. The race to go public is now a race to convince the market that artificial intelligence is a business, and not just a very expensive research project. And now 3 stories from a world in which a duck in a Mexico jersey was barred from the World Cup by FIFA. A psychic cat in Northern Ireland correctly predicted 19 matches in a row. And thieves in Tobago used a stolen backhoe to rip an ATM from a building, and then abandoned both. Story 1. Merlin the duck has become the unofficial mascot of the 2026 World Cup. The 2-year-old duck, who wears a green Mexico jersey and accompanies his owner as she sells drinks in Mexico City, has become a global internet phenomenon. Fans pushed for Merlin to attend Mexico's match against the Czech Republic at the Estadio Azteca. He arrived in a transport crate, accompanied by his owner and her son, as curious fans gathered for a glimpse. FIFA barred him from entry under its ban on animals in stadiums. The world's 6th most famous duck was denied his dream. The tournament continues without him. The duck, presumably, is handling it better than the fans. Story 2. In County Down, Northern Ireland, a 1-year-old British shorthair named Billy has become a worldwide sensation by correctly predicting the winner of 19 consecutive World Cup matches. His owner presents him with 2 national flags before each game, and Billy selects his winner with a paw. The streak finally ended on Thursday when South Africa defeated South Korea 1-0. Billy had chosen South Korea. He will continue making predictions. The law of averages has finally caught up with the cat, but 19 out of 20 is a record most human pundits would envy. Story 3. In Plymouth, Tobago, thieves used a stolen backhoe to tear an ATM from the side of a building. The machine contained approximately $641,000. The backhoe was left abandoned at the scene. The ATM was removed. The thieves did not escape with the money. The entire operation was captured on camera and has become a source of considerable online amusement. The backhoe, the ATM, and the would-be masterminds have all achieved a kind of symmetry. The stolen vehicle was used to steal a machine that could not be stolen, and nobody got anything except a place in the annals of failed heists. Day 120. The ceasefire that was supposed to end a war has instead produced a new round of strikes. The framework agreement that was supposed to end a different war has been rejected by the party that matters most, and the rescue window in Venezuela is closing while the death toll keeps climbing. The connective tissue is that every agreement signed this week was described as a beginning, and every one of them is already being tested by the people who refused to sign. The framework is a framework. The ceasefire is a pause between shots. And the only prediction that held all week was made by a cat in Northern Ireland, which is about as reliable as anything else in this cursed timeline.